Frank, no, I think I should be able to figure that out if I need to plug in there. Frank Sermonero is not going to be here. Something came up with him and his son, so he's not going to be here tonight
For the
whole thing. Yeah. So we can go ahead and get this meeting started. I asked Mike, it's Homcha, to stop in tonight and present some information on his company. I provided the board with some PDFs that he had provided to me of what his company does, but for the benefit of the public, Mr. Kurtz, his company is essentially a consulting firm, and what they do is they meet with businesses or municipalities or school districts to talk about how they can reduce their expenses and find greater efficiencies and things of that nature. They get compensated out of the savings that they realize for their clients.
Is it a net savings or a gross savings?
Well, we'll let Mike speak for himself. So anytime you're ready, come on up and you can address the committee.
Well, if you can take one and pass it around, please. I have a handout here for each of you. And thank you, Adrian, for inviting me.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
Appreciate it. As a taxpayer and resident of Daniel Boone School District in Amity Township, this is something near and dear to my heart, helping the school district save some money. As you'll read when you get in there, I work for a company called Expense Reduction Analysts, and we are the world's largest consultancy of its type. Most consulting firms, when they come into a business, they will ask you, consult, where's your pain? And they will send out RFPs, try and get you better pricing. They'll come in with a recommendation, hand you a recommendation, an invoice, wish you the best, and walk away. We're completely different. We go through the RFP process, which I know you're all familiar with. But once we find an opportunity for savings that you agree is worth implementing, we then go back to not only the consultant or the companies that failed to get the contract or bid, because we let them know why they failed. When we go back to the winning bidder, we then work with them through the entire implementation process. We do not just drop that on our clients and say, here you are, best of luck to you. Once we have a project implemented, we then also work with our clients for the next 24 months, ensuring that the pricing and best practices are being adhered to make sure that you're getting the value that was agreed to when we sent out and approved the RFPs. Then, as far as we get paid, I heard that brought up. For instance, if we save you $100,000 on telecommunications, we split the savings 50-50 down the middle. That is money that had already been budgeted in all likelihood that you would be spending. So you get to keep $50,000 of those savings, and we get the other $50,000. Okay, that's it's sharing the savings. Mm-hmm. Okay, we are coming off a very successful program with the school district in Montgomery County. For confidentiality, we're not allowed to reveal names. We do sign a non-disclosure agreement, as do our clients, to keep everything quiet unless we get the okay to go ahead and use them. We were able to find them substantial savings in their food services operation in the cafeterias. We're able to save substantially on telecommunications, IT, and waste management. Okay. I see really no reason why this could not be a benefit to Daniel Boone School District as well. We have over 750 consultants worldwide who are all experts in their field. They all have their masters and doctorates in their specific industry. This is something that they do every single day of the year. Unlike most processes within an organization, the controller or a purchasing agent will talk to their existing salespeople and say, hey, you know what, prices are getting out of hand, can you help us out? chances are they'll come back and say, yeah, we can give you 7%, 10%, and the purchasing agent is happy, okay? But are they truly getting the best price? They don't know because they have no base mark upon which to base it. With all of our projects that we do on a daily basis all around the world, we know what people are paying, we know what businesses should expect to pay, and still allow the vendor to make a fair profit. Okay, that is important. And any recommendation that we make is always like for like or like for better. Okay, there is never quality cutback. No one has ever lost their job because of us. We don't get into staffing unless it's staffing through temp agencies, okay, which in all likelihood wouldn't affect the school district. We work strictly on a contingency fee basis. If we can't save you any money, we don't get paid. And that's how confident we are and how successful we are. We save our clients money 93% of the time. And over 70% of the time, we also maintain the incumbent vendors with better pricing. I'll give you a perfect example of how that works. I have permission to use the name of Prudential Home Sale Real Estate Services. They're one of my clients. I approached them a little over a year ago, met with their CFO, and he was, their CFO got it. I mean, right from the gate, it was the shortest sales call I've ever had in my life. It's just, where do I sign? What do I need to do? I talked to them about their office supplies. They said, well, you know what, that really probably won't be worthwhile because we just renegotiated with our current supplier and they gave us a 10% discount right out of the gate, and then they also brought us in under Prudential's nationwide buy-in program. I said, well, at least let us validate the numbers for you. I turned this over to our top office supplies person, went back to the incumbent vendor, and we got them an additional 37% on top of the nationwide program that they had already approved, and they thought that was the greatest thing in the world. So these savings are out there, but until you know truly what is fair value, you know, you're stuck. You're taking the word of the vendors, you're taking the word of the salesperson, and this really comes into play when some of these relationships are in place for years and years and years, because you just don't know. And that's where we come into the picture.
So,
any of you have any questions?
What areas, I mean, I see here you listed telecommunications, IT, banking fees, food services, janitorial and cleaning service, insurance, waste management, records management, printing, reprographics, payroll services. What other types of service areas might you look at with this other school district that you're currently talking to?
Okay, some of the others that we're talking about, they are in a similar situation with office supplies here in Berks County. Everybody's in with BCIU.
Right.
BCIU is a company that I have been working to try to get into for a long, long time. Meeting stiff resistance there. Again, they feel that they are getting the best prices. Maybe they are, and maybe someday I'll be able to get in there. Other areas, and I believe I read in the paper that Daniel Boone approached this last year, was their utility costs, energy costs. Okay, so that's another one that we were talking about as well. Another place, another area is fleet maintenance, and also chemicals for their athletic fields. Okay, there's a whole world of opportunity out there. If it's a spend, we can take a look at it. So if any of you have any ideas, say, hey, could you look at this? What do you think, or this?
Yeah. One of the things we had talked about was outsourcing payroll.
I think Daniel's got some additional information on that too, but that maybe, we can talk about that in the context of what he offers.
The reason I asked you, I mean, you didn't answer the question. My question was, is your savings net or is your savings gross? Because if there is a cost of implementing, say, telecommunication, where there's a cost of installation, and we may save $100,000, but it may cost us $45,000 to get that in.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up for me. We will take a look at what the cost of implementation would be. Also, the decision to proceed is going to be strictly our clients. Okay, if we come in and you'll save $100,000, but it's going to cost you $80,000. No, we wouldn't even recommend that, in all likelihood. Now if you come back and say, no, we want it, it's better equipment, blah blah blah, then yes, we would.
But again, is your savings, will you get paid on net of that implementation cost, or is it a case-by-case basis?
Generally,
Yeah.
believe it or not, in my 3 years of doing this, that's the first time that question's come up.
Like,
Before I say it's this way, let me clarify it. Back on that, I
I mean,
promise I'll get back to you.
because some of these things could, there's an implementation cost. I mean, hey, office supplies are office supplies, but telecommunication being a big one.
Yeah,
You know, it may, putting in a new phone system could be expensive. And, you know, yeah, we'd save $100,000, but, you know, if it's a $20,000 install and we're only netting 80, and, you know, and you're gonna share 50 of that.
oh, no, then it would be on the 80.
Okay.
It would
so
be
the
on the 80
implementation
then.
cost is off. Of what the
Right,
initial-
because that's an expense to you.
Okay.
Okay, there wasn't any savings realized on that.
Is it just on that one time, or is it, let's say, because if you obviously, it's an annuity, right? I mean, if you're going to spend some money on this phone system, you switch, you're not going to spend that $100,000 the following year, or even the implementation of the other 20. You know, you're going to realize a greater savings in year 2, 3, 4, 5. How do you guys?
Okay, with that, when we get into something like telecom, where we're talking about new hard product right there, that will not be factored into the baseline report. We're looking at the true costs.
So hard costs, it's just whatever the difference is. If it's a soft cost, like a contract, is it on the entirety of the contract, or is it on, like if it's a 5-year contract?
I think the point is that if it's $100,000 the first year, $100,000 the second year, $100,000 the third year, that's $300,000 over 3 years of the contract. Is your fee $150 or is it $50? I mean, is yours based on an annualized savings or the term of the
No,
agreement?
it's because we do the audits monthly. Okay?
Okay.
Every month I go up to Prudential and I copy a stack, well, it's almost a ream of telephone invoices. Because when we first took over their telecom project, they were receiving 147 invoices each month. We had that down to 70, okay, by consolidating vendors, getting rid of some, bringing in pretty much existing players that they already had, but expanding their capacity. For instance, we got rid of AT&T because in some cases they were charging them 24 cents a minute for long distance, which is, absurd.
No, I got the point that you copy in, but my point is your fee an annual fee? Okay, you go up monthly, but is it a 12-month?
We bill monthly.
Is it a 12-month and done? Is it 24 months?
It's 24 months. We will bill each month for what the savings are based on the baseline report.
So you get paid for 2 years?
Yes, yes, because we're also monitoring for 2 years.
Okay. Because that second year then is an expense and not a savings. I mean, it is.
Maybe you account for it in year 1. I don't know.
We'll have to look how we account for it, but I mean, that second year, the organization is an expense line item.
Yeah.
Versus a savings. Okay. Third year is a savings because we're not paying them anymore.
Yeah, third year, they're entirely all yours.
We also have something unique with our food services where we're guaranteed a profit by our food service.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the things that we've done in the past is, I mean, last year we had Sodexo come in and take a look at our food services. They are currently providers of food services, and we asked them, they looked at, okay, if we came in and took over all of it, would there be a savings? And we already run a pretty lean ship, so there really wasn't really anything to be realized there. And it is a profit center for our organization. Does that mean that,
I mean, we get more
we
profit out of it.
can't get more profit out of it exactly? I mean, maybe. And I don't, Ken, maybe you can speak to some of the issues, like in terms of waste management and.
What did you do with the other school waste management? How did you make
Well, we
it
found
work?
out that there was a route, they were just sitting there putting everything out. They were having excessive collections that they really didn't need. Too many waste containers of the wrong size. And in addition, there was also a lot of, we were able to get the vendor to reimburse them for part of their waste, their cardboard and so on, because they're recycling it and reselling it.
Right.
Okay, so they were making a profit off of that too, so we went after that, so that in turn came back to the school district, a great deal of it.
Mike, where
Yes.
in your work with other school districts have you actually realized the biggest savings for other schools, in what one of these areas?
Well, both the IT and the telecom
Okay.
that are on there, and the waste management as well.
In terms of IT, like what kind of, can you give us examples of what you've done with IT? Is it bulk purchasing or is it something else?
The costs of the, for instance, with IT and telecom, there's many times an overlap. And part of that occurred where people were paying for full T1s, but they had no reason on God's earth to have purchased in the first place or to have leased. So we were able to go back in, get them out of the T1s, get them into something that was more appropriate for them, and lowered their pricing considerably on things like that.
I mean, how many school districts you work with?
That was going to be my question. Thanks. I was going to ask that same thing.
Being in sales, being the eternal optimist, Daniel Boone would be the fourth.
And on average, because I'm a salesman too, on average, what is your average savings for these districts?
The lowest was 15%, and on
50%
the...
of
I'm sorry?
dollar-wise.
Oh, boy. Because, okay, it's running around $9,000 to $11,000 a month on telecom, which is big, and on their IT, that's another $4,000 a month, and waste management is around $1,200 to $1,700 a month on waste management.
12 to 14,000 a month for a school, for
Right.
a school district.
Right.
How many pickups did the other schools have as far as our waste management? Can you recall?
It varies according to the individual school itself.
Right.
One of them we were able to cut back to once a week. Some of them, they were there every day.
We have 3 times a week, and at the high school, if they don't get there by a certain time, our dumpsters are overflowing.
Okay. And here again, everyone is different.
Cafeteria.
Yeah.
We have a lot of waste.
You know, that's why my key position with expense reduction analyst is in client acquisition, which is coming out, talking to businesses, talking to schools. And the other part of that is I'm the project manager. It's my job to select the best analyst for the job. For instance, right now I'm involved with a bank headquartered in central Pennsylvania. And their telecommunications, which we will be looking at, is just too large an undertaking for one person. And I base that on my experience with Prudential Home Sale Services, which really just totally blew our minds when we saw how involved and detailed that was, with starting out with 140 or 170 invoices. Yeah, it was 140 some invoices each month, and having to go down and break it down, and all that data has to be entered. Okay, when you talked about the pivot tables before, it was like, oh boy, do I know what you're talking about? And it does vary. So with this, with the bank, what I'm doing is I'm assembling a team. Going to have 5 people working on this, where each one will have a different sector to work it and break it out. And that's all part of my job too, is determining who's the best person for the job.
How does an entity move forward with your company? You have a standard contract that you can share with us at some point in time if the board is interested in moving forward with this, or is there, and then what's the process then? Who do you meet with? How do you start scheduling this stuff, and so on and so forth?
Great question. We have several steps in this process. The first thing is a business saying, yes, we'd like to pursue this further. So before we go anywhere and we start discussing finances and bills and so on, we co-engage a client confidentiality agreement. It's very simple. It says we won't discuss with any competitor or outsider without your say-so what you're paying for such and such. And by the same token, you agree not to tell other people what we are doing, okay, unless we agree to that. Then the next step is a letter of authorization that would be addressed on school district letterhead to the various vendors involved for the particular project. And it's just saying we've engaged DRA in cost reduction measures. One of the categories they're looking at is telecommunications. You know, please work with them as though you were working with us. You know, yours very truly signed off. Then following that is a letter of an engagement letter or contract. And that outlines the terms and conditions, how we get paid, how we operate. It talks about what your obligations are to us and what our obligations are to you. I've also spelled out some of those on the back of the I believe it's the very last page of that handout, which talks about, you know, again, what's expected of us and how we operate. And the second to the last page, there is a flow chart on there which shows where we are at the very start and the process going through from beginning to end.
What happens, like, for example, we already are in a contract, I think, with Waste Management for at least 2 more years. I think it was just new this year.
Yeah, through the IU.
Through a bid process. How does that happen? I mean, or like, what happens with that? Because now also we're getting ready to go, all the schools are entering stuff for their bids for 12, 13. It's going to be compiled and sent to the IU and sent out.
Okay, good question. What we do with that, many times, even though a client is, or a prospect is under contract, many times we can still approach the vendor and approach them about renegotiating. Because they, number one, they want to retain your business. And number two, they don't want to look bad by saying, no, we're not going to even talk to you about it. Some are pretty smug, especially if they've got a market corner, where they just absolutely will not. But in many, many cases, we can get them, you know, to reopen the negotiations again, because they want to come across in the best light possible.
So you tried several times with the IU to get your foot in the door?
No, I can't get my foot in the door out there yet. It's, well, see, many times, most businesses, there are several fears that enter into this when someone like us approaches them. Biggest fear is where the person who is running a particular segment of the operation is fearful that we're going to make them look bad. But that's not the case at all, because we can't do what we do successfully without their help. And believe me, every report that we do, we address the help that we've gotten from this individual, that individual, to let anybody know who's reading that report that their service, their help, their input was invaluable. Okay? People, the other fear is that, we talked about how they may look bad. The other thing is that it's just a whole trickle down that they just want to believe that nobody can do it better, that the staff that they've hired and put in place is doing the best job because I oversee it. How could it not be the best? And people are, as you know, are reluctant to change. People are very afraid of change. So, you know, somewhere along the line, if we get a possibility of moving ahead on a project, we want to meet right up front with the key stakeholders. Who are they? Who are the ones that can bring a project to a screeching halt with the stroke of a pen, or simply saying, no, I don't want to do it? So we can enhance their comfort level. We have some handouts that we use that talk about how can we do it better. And again, I mention it's because the analysts that we put on these projects, this is all they do every single day of the year. other than weekends and holidays, they are digging into telecom, they are digging into waste management, they're digging into janitorial supplies. They are on top of their game like nobody.
So
Okay.
how much time does it require of the administrative personnel to work with your analysts?
On average, to get a project rolling is a maximum of 3 hours. Because as I had mentioned up at Prudential, when I go up there, it's great because their office supplies, we can download all of that from Staples online. Okay, we have their permission as their agent. They gave us the access code. We just go in, download it, boom. It's there for us. The telecommunications, when I go up there, I am there from 9 in the morning till about 3:30 in the afternoon, just copying. But when I work with their accounts payable person, when I come in there, she has all of the invoices from that month sitting on a pile. There they are, Mike. I come in, pick them up, and that's the last I see her until the end of the day when I bring everything back for her. So when she comes in and she writes a check, puts it on the pile, okay, that's her Mike when he comes in. Just boom, boom, boom. So it really doesn't take her any more time. It's not taking time out of her workday. She's still doing the same thing. It's just instead of putting it here, she's putting it here for an extra day. So figure about 3 hours. And that, again, is to get the project rolling.
I'm back on just waste management as an example. Now, IU goes out for bid for us on that. Are you going to go out for bid on that as well? Or are you just going to go back to waste, in this example, just go back to waste management and try to get a better rate from them?
Okay. We always go to the existing vendor unless we are instructed not to. And we will also send out as many RFPs as are needed to get
Verify the
an
price.
appropriate.
I guess I'm just concerned about, because I know there's the quoting laws and the bidding laws and the thresholds for PA and the school districts, and just to make sure all that's copacetic if
Yeah.
you were to do that. I mean, because we wouldn't be bidding again. We've already bid once, so I guess in my mind, to make it fair for that bidding process, wouldn't you have to go back to all the vendors that bid to see if they want to?
As far as the contract, you'd almost imagine you
Yeah.
have
It
to.
also
That's
runs into
why I
an
asked
issue where
if
you've
you ever-
entered into the IU as an agreement. We take our business away from them, then therefore the economy of scale for the other vendor is gone.
Exactly.
And
Well, the other thing then is maybe what we need to do is we need to talk to the IU.
yeah, find out what,
Why
because
is
we
it-
may not be able to get out of some of these agreements without a penalty.
Or vice versa, get an organization like this into the
Into the
IU
IU.
so that the IU isn't controlling all of this information. They actually have a third party come in and work with us. I mean, we are a member. I mean,
Because those savings be passed on to all members.
everybody.
I really
Exactly.
think that may be the way to go.
That's the way
in
to
the
go. I
interim,
mean, I know you've tried. I can, I
because
can
that's
talk to
really
some
where we
people at
do all of our
the
Yeah.
IU also.
stuff.
That's where most of ours, except for food services, most of it's, we do the IU.
and food service. I have to do it the way the state tells me
Yeah,
to do it. To
yeah.
bid that out. I mean, that's a requirement. So.
Could you, Mike, because we're kind of running short on time, I hate to cut you off, but could you maybe go back to the school districts that you're currently working with and ask them, what sort of roadblocks that they run into, or maybe you know these offhand, in terms of, working with your organization and overcoming some of the relationship issues that they had with their vendors or their IUs or whatever the case may be. We have an insurance consortium that we work through for our insurance and stuff like that. So if there is issues that you've already worked through with these other school districts, what were the solutions to those issues? Because we don't need to sit here and bang our heads against the table trying to figure it out if somebody else has already done it. And in the interim, maybe we can talk to our IU rep and send them off to the next meeting and have a conversation with the other members of the IU about, what we're looking to do with an organization like yours and how, having the IU give people like you the access to at least get an idea as to what savings might be realized would be helpful to us.
Okay.
And I know that, you can't disclose your your clients, what is it? I mean, could you go back to one, like, for example, the Montgomery County School District and say, hey, look, I have another school district that's interested. You know, would somebody from your organization be willing to talk to somebody from their organization? Just I mean, even if
I was
it's
going to ask that.
the superintendent. I mean, you know, we don't necessarily have to know who it is, but maybe if one
I think we'd
person
almost
could call-
want that because
I think you'd have to.
school
You'd have to at
districts
some
are
point.
such a unique
Right.
entity unto themselves that we want to know, we'd want to be able to ask them questions such as, you know, I mean, no matter if you're Montgomery County, Montgomery County's got an IU also.
Right.
Now, how did they overcome some of the IU issues? And how did they, just so that we're not breaking new ground
Yeah.
and we know what we have
It
to.
was kind of interesting because the most recent one that I was working with on records management, they were able to do themselves within. In other words, office supplies was totally off the table, no way to address that because of being part of the GAO through the IO or IU. But they said almost every service they were allowed to do themselves, like waste management and the records management and document storage.
Yeah, I think it's not an issue whether or not we go with the IU or do it on our own.
Right.
I think we have to. There's certain deadlines by which we have to let the IU know that we're participating or not participating, because obviously
Right.
there's an economies of scale when it comes to pricing and stuff
Sure.
like that when the IU goes out to bid.
Okay.
So, you know, at any rate, I'm just trying to think of what the next steps would be. I mean, I personally think there's an opportunity here to work in an organization like yours or your organization specifically to realize any kind of savings that we can, because quite frankly, we're going to probably need it. I'm just trying to think about what the next steps might be. So if on your end you'd be able to, you know, look at those things, maybe get one of your school districts to reach out to Dr. Otto directly if they're willing to do that.
Sure.
It'll help answer some of the Q&A. We can sign an NDA if that's necessary. Maybe also if you can give us examples of your letters of your engagement letters, so we get an idea as to what the contract
Certainly,
might be.
I'll do that.
Because we'll have to review that as a committee, and then from here we make a recommendation to the entire board, and so it's a multi-step process. So the more information we have to review and come to some sort of consensus on, then we can make a recommendation up to the board.
Okay. The other thing that I, might ask from you between now and next month, and I'll obviously be in touch with you before that, is to give some thought to perhaps one category that you may want to explore. And just think about it. And then I may be able to find some more specific category data available for you that, I'll be able to share the information and how we were able to do it.
I think the piece of probably telecommunications. It's not something we're tied to the IU with.
Yeah, we already did with another company, we did an audit with them also, telecommunications.
But I mean,
Well,
that's
IT also, I mean,
IT.
Yeah.
That's what we have our own budget for IT.
Going back and revisiting the telecommunications could
Yeah.
hurt, because we're being told now that we're getting the best deal possible.
Heard that before.
I mean, that, we're being told, we know
Yeah.
we got IT, we got potential opportunities with IT, but we're being told telecommunications, they've scraped everything they could get out of that for us.
The one thing that, with the telecommunications is it does take a long time. And down here, we're with,
Windstream.
Windstream used to be D&E. In fact, I used to work upstairs on the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult because in some places where you don't have Verizon as the main telephone company in there, it's a little difficult because I don't even know, maybe the regulations have changed, that even a company like Verizon could come in.
No, we don't have a choice.
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't have a choice yet. We're still rural.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there still may be some others, that are out there. I'm not sure. Every place that I've worked, Verizon has been the main incumbent, so there were a lot more choices available to them.
yeah.
Whereas I know Windstream can go into Verizon territory, but Verizon couldn't come into Windstream territory.
Yeah,
Right.
they're still,
Yeah.
Well, I think we can hammer those things out as we go along. There may
Okay.
be other things you guys can think of. or these other school districts that you're working with, that you've been able to do things with them that we haven't thought of on our end. So
Right.
I think what we'll do is I'll follow up on our end with, we'll bang our heads together here and think of some categories that maybe you guys can look into for us, and if you can get some of that information to us, that'd be very helpful.
Okay.
And then we'll go on
Appreciate
from there.
that. And I thank you for your time.
Thank
If
you.
any of you have any questions, my card is there, my email is on there, telephone number. I thank you very much, and
Thank you for
go
coming in.
Blazers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thanks. Okay. Okay, so sort of moving on with our agenda here, I asked Danielle to provide how much did we recoup on activity fees for this year so far?
$69,025. That
Danielle,
was
what-
through
what-
the end of September.
What had we budgeted?
154,000, which included.
So we've got 2 sports seasons to go,
I
right?
understand that.
Yeah,
I think there's also
Not as
physical,
heavily participated as the one.
physical fees are in there, I think, and
We haven't done the physicals yet.
we did them for the
For the
For the
summer,
fall.
for the fall.
We haven't done them for the.
Again, I'm just trying to figure if we're gonna.
Are you doing winter? Because I thought it said that there was one shot at physicals this year.
Is that it? I
That's
think I
what
remember
that's
reading
what they
that
said,
somewhere.
but I
Yeah, I
don't.
think I do now too.
I remember Tom saying that before he left. We're having it once and done.
Yeah. That's what the internet said when they did them was,
Then I
this is
think-
your one shot this year for physical kind of thing. So.
That's my point, we're gonna fall short.
We might.
Yeah, what we budgeted.
Well, just as a working on next year's budget, I'm leaving it the same right now until we get to a point where I can see where we
Just
are.
the back of a bar napkin.
Yeah. For now, it's staying what it was this year in the budget.
I thought we budgeted something less than that.
No, I think
I
I
think it
remember
was
looking at it.
154.
I thought it was pretty high.
I probably have it in here somewhere.
Because
I'm pretty sure.
Let's leave you probably in that final sheet when we were at it. Several hundred different line items.
Yeah, but I had already had some money in there, so depending
Okay.
on. I think it
Probably
was
the physical money
150.
in there
I'm
and
pretty
stuff.
sure it was 154. I would almost.
Put your life on it.
And then we upped the admissions because of the tickets to like 60,000. I want to say.
Spring's
We're
a
gonna fall
big
short.
one too.
Yeah.
Track is big.
I mean, my recollection, there weren't that many multi-sport athletes when I was going through the list. A lot of people just play one sport. So, the whole, X number of dollars for the second sport thing, most of it was from the initial sport. And you had a lot of kids that play sports in the fall, and then conversely to that, a lot in the spring. We'll
You
see.
have winter, you have spring, you still have winter, you have
It's going to be
spring.
close.
Winter won't be a big hit.
Well, but,
But I mean, the teams
I have
are,
the basketball.
right, the teams are kind of
Everybody
limited
go
by
out
how
for
many
the track
people they
team
carry.
tomorrow. Get your buddies to go out for the track team.
Right. Okay, so
But
we.
is it, let me ask you this though, have you seen a decrease in, do you think there's a decrease in participants or? No, okay, I mean, we haven't really seen that.
In the
It's-
band, it
I'm
was,
not-
but it wasn't because of the fee,
It was
because of
because
other
they didn't
reasons.
have to.
The grade
do it.
or whatever. Yeah.
No, now I have my own opinion on that one, but I'll keep it to myself. I just wondered if we thought, if there was a decline due to the fee.
I don't
Not
know.
a noticeable one.
I've only heard this from one parent. When I was out at the soccer games the other night at Amity AC, one parent was kind of chewing my ear off a little bit about the fees. And I think there was a little confusion on this person's part. They thought that the activity fee covered everything, whether it was clubs or whatever else. And I had to keep explaining to him, I was like, no. Whatever the other additional fees that were out there, they're still in place. This is just a revenue generator to help us cover the stipends and all the other things that are associated with that particular activity. And so they came back and said, well, why don't we just have one fee that covers it all? And I said, well, we could do that, but that just means it's going to be a bigger fee.
Right.
And at the end of the day, what difference does it make?
Not
So
to mention, if you're only going to be in the chess club, you don't want to pay $200.
Exactly.
Big fee is going to chase people away.
Exactly.
And
I mean,
I think it's fine where it is.
I'm getting grief because they're paying the fee and they're getting less than they got last year anyways.
Less in terms of what?
Well,
Plus money.
cross country's not, they have to raise their own fees to go to invitational meets. Last year it was paid for.
Right.
That was taken out of the budget. So they're paying $150 to run track, to run cross-country, and they have to raise fees to, and it's going to be the same thing with track in the spring. They can't go to invitationals unless they raise
Because
money.
we did, even with the implementation of the activity fee, we did cut the athletic budget.
Yeah.
So there,
No, right, we
everybody
did.
suffered a
But
little
they've
bit of
been
pain.
doing, I mean, they did fundraisers last year. I mean, wrestling's a fundraiser.
There's more that they have to, I mean,
Right,
the result is they're paying a little more for some of the stuff.
I mean, if your kids have been playing sports from kindergarten on up,
Yeah, so
you should be,
it's-
not to be rude, but you should be used to it. I mean, it used to be you got to high school and it was kind of laid
It's
off.
just
But I
change,
mean, I
right.
remember,
It's just
you know,
change.
first, second, third, fourth, wrestling, cheerleading, all that. It was $70 to sign up or $100
Right.
to sign up, and then you had to buy the uniform. And you had to buy the $60 sneakers, and you had to buy
What,
3
youth?
fundraisers. Yeah, the youth.
Oh,
I mean,
my
the
God,
youth is just as bad, so if they
Well,
should be
my
used
kid
to
was in
it.
youth.
You know, you
My
can give
daughter
them
went to
everything, they'll find
gymnastics
something else
for
to bitch about, so.
14 years, and I'll tell you what, we spend
Less money on that than
tens of
football.
thousands of dollars. Let me tell you
No, you
what.
do. That's what I
You're
mean.
almost better off just
I'm
banking it
serious.
and
I'm
giving it to her as a
serious.
graduation present when she gets done with college.
I'm serious.
Okay, so moving on, debt opportunities to reduce costs, retire debt swap. Where are we with our debt limit right now? How much do we have outstanding, do you know?
I didn't write that one down.
Okay, sorry about that. About 90.
Honestly, I
Doesn't-
can't tell
I'm
you.
just
I don't
curious.
even know.
I thought when we looked at that last year when Ellen wanted to send us up the river again, that we couldn't touch another one for like 2 or 3 years.
Well, refund, no, it's.
No,
it's
that's the
like-
refunding, or
That's like maybe
refinance.
7 years. But I think Andrew's just asking what our debt,
Well, I
what our
understand, but
balance
the
is
idea
right
was
now.
that we could look to refinance
Is that what you
something
mean by our
somehow.
debt balance?
Not until,
Well, what was
not
the
for
debt
like
balance?
7 years.
And so our opportunities to refinance certain bond issues aren't for another couple of years.
Yeah.
I guess one of the other questions that I'm always kind of curious about, especially with interest rates now artificially low and look like they're going to be low for a considerable amount of time, you know, we're underwater in our swap. We made $1.2 million on the swap when we did it. We've since spent how much on interest?
344,000.
340.
21.
Yeah, so, you know, we spent a third of that or a quarter of that to date. And so sooner or later, even the profit that we may chew up. So I guess the question is, what is the cost to get ourselves out of it? And I asked Danielle this once before. I think it was close to $1 million or something.
No,
or,
it was over 3 at the time. This
Now
is as
it's-
of Friday. It was 2,869,289. So
2.8, so it's still out of reach to do anything like that. I think just knowing that from time to time, there may come a point in the future when it's worthwhile to
That we'd have to,
Bang it out.
get out of it.
well, we
It
get to a
depends.
point, but you'd almost have to balance the budget and then do a 1 mil tax increase or something to be able to get out of it.
That's
well, not
gonna
if we
fly,
can,
no.
not if we can use that savings. If we can get to a point where we have
Where
that
we can use
savings,
that, it's
then
there.
you wouldn't touch
You
general
You still got
fund,
the
so,
700 or
you know.
$900,000 that you can use as part of the. I guess the question would be, well, what point do you get down to where it's only $900,000 or $800,000
Well, we won't be
to
on the board at that point probably, so.
the way the Fed's locking in rates? You're probably right. You're probably right.
I'll
Okay.
email everyone the outstanding debt balance when
Okay.
I get it.
Transition house update. I was just kind of curious as to, I asked Danielle, you know, what was the total amount of money we put in versus the $12,000 in revenue that we're getting, just to kind of get a sense as to.
Well, the cost to purchase the property was $260,000. Kenny, as far as I know, put into it about $9,800, which we split 50-50 with the IU. So it was about $4,900 that they paid and $4,900 that we paid to get it ready.
Okay.
So
If we throw
about
it out, we have to-
$265,000
That
total
was
we had
ADA.
into it.
I mean, that's basically ADA
How much?
stuff that we had.
About
Well, hell, ramp it.
$265,000 we personally have
Well,
into it.
oh, I liked it.
And the lease is for $1,000 a month.
That is correct.
Okay.
About a year and a half payback before we start making money off.
Well, we'll make money off it this year in terms of the initial capital. I mean, obviously, we didn't buy the property
Right.
as an investment property. We bought it
Tear down.
to tear it down and put a parking lot in there or something else.
Tear down John Bradley's.
That's why I said, let's do something with it.
So, okay, cost-cutting ideas. We sort of talked about HR and also maybe reducing or outsourcing of payroll or something else.
We
You
have
guys
an
have done-
HR We don't have an HR department.
No.
Not per se.
Anne Marie, Julie, Dr. Otto, and I.
And
And Kenny sometimes.
So we can't really outsource HR because we have to give it to you
Whoever's,
guys.
where's the hat?
Just our arm. Just our arm.
It was more, I guess, when I say outsourcing HR, it was like whatever duties. So we have certain duties in-house that
I'll
these
give up my
people take
watch and
care
my
of.
rings.
Depends
Any
what day
ideas?
it is.
If we outsource those duties to a third party, does that free up time internally to handle other issues?
Again, I look at it from the bullet train stuff I did with, when GE bought us, and, unless you're actually removing a head, you're not saving any money. So even if you gave Danielle an extra hour a week to work on a budget, she's a salaried employee, so we didn't save anything, other than her quality of life, but then it cost us something.
But that's meaningless to us.
Yeah.
Anyways, right? So,
Right, there's
but-
always the
but-
theory that the employee's there, it doesn't really matter what
Right,
they're doing,
correct,
they're there.
correct.
But could what they're doing be more profitable or productive or efficient?
But unless
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
caught,
yeah.
again,
I
if
don't know
you
if
follow
rather than mentioning names,
the
I don't think we have to do
philosophy
that for
of
executive.
leaning something out, lean manufacturing, leaning an operation out, unless you're actually removing something from a budget,
Correct.
It's
it
not
doesn't
standard.
save us any.
no, but I think the reason why this sort of came up was, you remember, somebody left the district to go to someplace else, and then we were kind of redistributing that workload amongst the people we had. And the question was, do we hire somebody else? Do we give raises to the people
That's
that we
what
have?
they- right.
So there was a direct impact in terms
Or
of cost,
outsource, or I mean.
or outsource it to a
Again,
third party.
I looked at those numbers when you said it. I mean, it was insignificant unless you outsourced payroll and not replace that headcount, period.
Right.
Right. So what did you guys find out?
Well, our definition of a payroll person and an outside company's idea of what a payroll person does, as we found out before when we had the BCIU do our payroll, are two different things. Our payroll person, along with the person that's doing our benefits, both of them are heavily involved in HR. In other words, payroll is taking the time, taking the salary, entering it into the system, and paying people. That is not what our payroll people do. In talking to the two companies that came in, they just came in and said, we can't touch it. Because they would need somebody there just to compile the information just for the payroll piece, not even the human resource side of it. And this is exactly why when we had attempted this with the IU when we lost our payroll person before, we kind of, after a few months, shook hands and walked away. It wasn't going to work.
Was that prior to the last person that left?
Yes. Yes.
That was before I got here, I think.
Yes.
So basically, we, thanks to Tamara and Alan Ross, they gave me names of folks. Paychex was one, AD Computer, and ADP. ADP never returned any phone calls, so I was not able to get anything from them. Paychex came out and met with Julie and I, and AD Computer, I spoke to him over the phone, and he basically said he didn't want to waste our time or waste their time in coming out, because he didn't know of any payroll company that would do all the things that we need to have done.
The HR stuff.
Right.
With the payroll.
With the payroll. He didn't even, like the Peasers is one big thing, the whole Peaser system and the whole upload and all that. He says, well, we could do the files for you, but you would have to physically do the work, which we do anyway.
Right.
We would still need someone in the office.
Well, and that's true, because, I mean, like, even this year we outsourced our payroll where I work, but our treasurer still does, she still totals the hours, throws it into a spreadsheet, or throws it into their online system, and does it. It's not like it's totally hands-free. Now,
And then you still have, for us, the entire HR piece.
well, and then, right, and then they, she still has to transfer money from different accounts,
Right.
and, do all that. So, I mean, there is work. I just didn't know if, like, I don't know how, we're still pretty antiquated, and we fill out time cards by hand.
No.
I mean, if you guys swipe and all that, or somehow,
They have the time clock. They thumb in.
okay, because I didn't know if, like, that somehow could all, like, goes into, like, some
They did
file that
that
just goes
A
off.
couple years ago, I guess that came right probably before you came onto the board. They
And that
had
didn't
implemented that.
Help our payroll person as much as it helped the assistant
Who does the benefits?
who does the benefits.
Payroll, she's meeting with people going out on maternity leave. She's dealing with all the salary employees and any of these step movements and recalculating payroll, and there's so much more to
Retirees coming in after.
it than just calculating the hours and submitting it. There's more to it than that.
Did you, did we send out like a, I forget what you call it.
RFP?
A pen link.
To,
Did you
Oh,
do a
pen
pen
to
link,
link?
other
yes.
schools to see if anybody outsources or if they,
I got none. This is the first time that's ever happened.
Julie also called the IU. This is just as a reference.
It's a very rare
and
thing to
he
do that.
said that he knows there's no
Yes, I did put that out.
one in Chester County, Montgomery County, Colonial that outsource. Their IUs can kind of, I guess, do what they did in the interim is help bridge the gap if someone leaves. RIU is looking at possibly being an outsource company for that for a charter school at the moment. They're looking at it. And their estimate for 550 employees would be $75,000.
but you know, that's really a niche service that,
It is.
that somebody could
Yeah, but let's not turn
potentially
your nose up to
capitalize.
that, though, if you think about it. By the time you get all
A
full
person
in
and
benefits,
benefits and
you
all
get
that?
the checks you're writing, the machine, the software, everything else, that may not be that bad.
No.
Because we've got to write our own checks.
You're saying you want to provide that niche service to other school districts?
I'm saying-
Now,
I'm saying-
I liked it.
He said 75,000 doesn't
I'm
really
saying
sound that
75,000 may
bad.
not be that far out. You
But I don't-
School district
Make it
in
40, all in
Pennsylvania,
benefits, you're
500.
at 75 grand.
But I don't
Yeah.
think that eliminates a
No, that
person
doesn't
here.
eliminate people. Like he said, you would still have to have somebody there for the pay, for,
Well,
Well, that
you're going
was
to have an
just for
HR
the-
position. You're always going to have somebody here to handle HR. Someone's got to, input the data once. I mean, what these companies like ADP and other places do is they're printing out the checks, they're sending them out automatically to wherever, and it relieves you of that burden internally. And I don't think I personally wasn't looking at it as a way of saying, okay, we're going to get rid of a body here. It was one of these things: do we have to hire a body, or can we get rid of a service that frees up everybody else's time in here, so you don't have to bring another person in? Is the way I was looking at it.
The other thing, we did talk to the auditor. I know how you guys feel about it, but she said she really discourages her schools for any of that because that is our largest expenditure, and you're going to put that out to a third party. So that was just her kind of 2 cents. I think our recommendation, the administration, is to not outsource, to not explore this any further, and to go with what we have because it's working. But that's just what we're bringing to the board.
Okay. I think the other part of that, it was a two-part piece, was having a backup plan in place in case something happens internally. Someone decides they're going to leave, or they get hit by a bus or something, and so we have some sort of plan B in place to handle.
We will. We don't
Yeah.
right now because of the learning curve.
Yeah.
With the HR person that's doing that piece now, she did do the benefits before, but she never did the payroll piece before. So the current payroll person is trying to teach her that while we're trying to teach the payroll person. So eventually, yes, that will be there, but not right off the bat.
and really, we have been very fortunate because the person that's in there doing payroll right now has done, with minimal help, a very, very good job. She was aware enough
And
of,
she did do it once or twice
Yes.
when the prior person that left was here. She did do a whole payroll just because we forced that even before
Right.
the person was
and
leaving.
I have to tell you, there are plenty of schools that if their payroll person went down, they would have to get the IU to do their payroll.
We didn't miss a beat.
Well, I mean, is that our backup? The IU is our backup?
No.
Okay.
My backup
we
would
wanna
be
develop our own.
internally.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's there to an extent. It's,
I would
it can't
say-
be fully there right now.
What are we, about 60 days into this now?
We're coming up on the 60-day.
Yeah, we had, if
which
you
is
remember
the
when the person
temporary.
left, we said we would like to kind of do this as a trial, as a pilot, and let somebody prove themselves. And I think what Danielle and Julie are saying is the transfer of the responsibilities to the existing staff has worked very well. And that's pretty much what our recommendation is based on.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fine with me. I mean, I just think that moving forward, as you guys get an opportunity to build some redundancies into.
But we'll need
whatever's
more
going
time to do
upstairs
that.
So that
Oh, absolutely.
somebody's out for whatever the reason, that we're not caught, with our pants down and struggling to meet a payroll or some other issue.
No, is our thought, make this person the payroll person and then backfill her or not backfill her?
What do you mean by that?
Well, she was doing something prior to this, we divvied up.
The way we have
No, we have we have the prior HR person in doing that job now. The goal would be, if the board is okay with this, the person doing the payroll right now would remain in that position, be given that position.
Right.
We would then open that position, which is human resource
payroll assistant.
payroll assistant. We would advertise that,
So you're gonna backfill?
and then we would interview.
Okay, you're gonna backfill.
So then, yes,
Domino.
People that are there.
So,
we would open.
net, we don't gain any, headcount reduction.
No,
Just a question,
no.
Yet.
yet.
There's always tomorrow. To think about those types of things. Okay. All right. You guys going to make that recommendation then to the board as a whole, or do you want this committee to do that?
Either way, we can also.
Or is this
do it.
more of a,
No, we're all
administration
on the
just needs
same
to
page.
fill in the board?
We're just
what
waiting for
they're
your
doing?
endorsement. We
I think
think
the
we have the
finance committee
plan.
brings it as a recommendation to
Right.
the full board.
Right.
Okay.
We have the plan. If you endorse the plan as a committee, we're ready to move forward with,
And, yeah,
going deeper and getting the redundancy built in that we talked about.
Okay.
because once that first domino falls, then we can fill in the rest.
Right. All right. I brought this up in facilities, and I was talking to Danielle about this afternoon. This is something we don't do currently, and I'm not sure any other school district does, but I know a lot of businesses do. I'm sure GE does, where I think it's a sort of a two-pronged issue. One is making sure that all of our invoices that come through the different buildings are being coded appropriately to the specific items that they're supposed to be in terms of a budget. We budget for line item 1,633, and that invoice that comes in ought to be coded to the same place that we budget as opposed to someplace else.
Danielle said she takes 2 days at the end of every year to straighten it all out.
Yeah, and
Trying.
and that's just what she understands. I mean,
Right.
obviously, she's not in the building. She doesn't understand what all the invoices are exactly
Well,
for.
each invoice should have an associated PO that should be.
There should be a PO on there.
Should be, or you don't pay. I mean, we could just start that policy. If there isn't a PO, we don't pay it.
And the person who puts the PO on, makes
Has
the
to
work
have it,
order has to have the right code. I mean, there's a whole
I
process
hate to say
here.
that, I mean, if you don't have a PO, then you haven't been approved to have something purchased.
Well, see, my ultimate goal is, in the perfect world, is to know what we call hand-stamped invoices, which is an invoice with a stamp on it. My goal is that anytime anyone wants to purchase something, a requisition or a purchase order is done first, which I get to see first and sign off on, and then Dr. Otto if the threshold amount is there. Then when their invoice comes in, there's no question
Why
where
in
it
the
gets
perfect world,
coded.
why don't we just say, this is what we're doing moving forward, period?
Well, one department
Well,
is
just say I don't have spare stuff laying around. Just say if I need a 3 horsepower pump, it burned up.
Right.
We need
But
to stamp,
I
we need
gotta
to
get
stamp
it.
But
something.
could you not call and say, hey, I need a requisition for a 3-horse pump, give me a number? And they give you a number? I mean. to
No,
try-
because
not
the
in
system
number,
assign-
right, it would
Yeah.
have to actually physically be entered in.
But I'm saying,
and-
yeah, but I got that, but I mean, physically enter it in short order, turn it around and give them a number so you can place the order.
Or, I don't even know if this is, but I know how we do it, because, if it's an emergency, I get a phone call that says, I just had to buy XYZ, and it was $389, and I need a PO. And then I get all but I don't
What
stop
puts to
them
stop
from wanting
the
to get it.
director
I
of
don't-
that
can you do something like that?
department from just issuing his own purchase order?
How?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean,
Maybe able
if
to get
Kenny
the
should be
PO
allowed to
number unless they
issue
enter it.
purchase
No,
order
it has to be
against his
entered.
budget.
Right.
But can you, who enters it?
The secretaries of the
Department.
department head, the building.
So what, they would enter it, and then it would go to you?
Now, they enter,
Okay.
they call Michelle, who takes care of it, to print the
purchase
edit.
order.
It's actually the edit. That edit then goes to Danielle for approval. If she approves it, Michelle will then print the PO and send it out to the appropriate areas.
Again,
So is that what you do, Ken? Like if you got to go buy something, you call,
You don't get a,
He just buys it.
you just
Pretty
buy
much
it.
he just
I
buys
just
it.
go out and get it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make Kenny's life more difficult, but if he knows he's gonna need a pump, and he goes out and gets it.
Well, the difference is Ken knows what the pump is for, and
I got-
therefore
I
he
got
can
that.
code it
But I
appropriately.
got that, but in
Right.
Oh,
Kenny's
we do
case in
code it.
particular.
Everything gets
But
coded.
I don't
Yeah.
know how complicated your system is, but you don't need to print a hard copy of the PO to send out to Kenny to go and give it to the customer if he's got a number.
But we can't give him a number unless the process
If the
is, unless
system
it's entered.
assigns
But how
Base-
complicated is that process?
Vendor name, amount, description of item,
coding,
coding.
Doesn't the code
Not
usually
real
generate all the other?
No, it's not real
That's not
complicated.
no.
I mean, again,
It's not.
so you
Like-
have a secretary that does that then for you, or if you did, does he have?
So you
For
need a
certain
pump, and
things,
you
for
had to
certain
follow the
things, we
process.
do purchase orders for Kenny's stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm just wondering if instead of, I don't know, I'm just trying to think through it. Could he just call? He's got the pump. He's on his way back. Whatever.
Call Lori
He
Barr up
calls
and do it.
whoever it is that does whatever they do, and says, "I just bought a pump from XYZ for this, and it was X," and then they can start the process.
But kind of at that point, it defeats the purpose. It's already been purchased.
Then do it ahead of time. I'm not trying to make Kenny's life difficult, but if it's only a 5 to 10 minute process.
Do it standing at the store. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
I don't
Well,
know.
I guess
Phone up,
I'm
send
just trying to think
email.
because like the way we do it is, every project manager has their budget, right? And the budget's already set up, and everything in the budget's already been coded. So if someone needs to buy a lumber or a concrete or whatever tools, there's a code for that. So when they go to their supplier, they'll say, "Do you have a work order number?" And our project manager says, "Yeah, it's code 673-988-2." And he knows that means tools or whatever it is. And they enter that into the thing. And so when they generate their invoice, that invoice comes back. The project manager gets it and says, "Oh, yeah, that was purchased for that job," signs off on it. It goes into our accounting, which then enters it into the system, and that becomes part of the
I'm
master
less
budget.
concerned with Kenny as I am
That's
with
what
everybody
we
else.
do.
out there.
That's what you do. I'm assuming that's what you do. But like, if you have a building principal, he's getting invoices in, right? He's got to approve them. He's got to code those appropriately. So either the control has to be you have somebody who knows what the codes are and they're putting them in the right places, and those are the people that are ordering the stuff. They know what it's for, right?
Well, I mean, I think that's better now.
I agree.
What I just described is better.
I believe the coding process has
No, what we're
gotten
actually
better.
It's gotten better. Okay. I'm just.
I
so-
know Kenny and I definitely, because we've sat down several times and made things clearer, and we're
Well, we
right
sat
on the
down
page.
several times because probably about a year ago, the state went and changed the budget codes on us.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean.
I think the issue for us is one of, and it's not necessarily you, but it could be a building principal or somebody else who's not paying attention to the invoices that are coming in. A secretary's coding them, but she doesn't know where they go. It comes up here to the central office where you guys don't know what you can guess what the appropriate code is, but you don't specifically know what that thing was for. So it may have been for I don't know, special ed versus first grade classroom or some other type of thing. And it goes in the wrong bin. And then, you get a lot of these things that are going in the wrong bins, and suddenly we're off budget. And then we're doing these transfers, these intercode transfers all the time to cover the cost. So
Who's the biggest
codes?
offender of our process?
Probably me.
No.
Which
you code them
process?
properly.
No, of the coding process.
Of the
Coding
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 process.
wrong.
You code them
Coding
properly.
incorrectly.
I'm talking about building principles.
It's not so much that they're coding incorrectly, is they're putting, let's say, $10,000 in supplies, and something comes up and they need a piece of equipment. So
They put
they're
it
wanting to
towards
transfer
supplies.
the money from supplies to buy that piece of equipment.
We went
That's
through,
what the
but we went
transfers
through this
are.
about
Yeah,
two
but
meetings ago.
then
that-
do you do actual? See,
What
and I
co-
know we do the transfer. You do transfers monthly, but would it help if you did? I don't know, like we do mid-year budget adjustments. So anybody that wants to transfer money from one line item into another has to do it in June, which for you guys would be, I don't know, whatever 6 months is. In
We have been trying to, for example, if somebody needs to go to a conference and their money is in supplies, we tell them they need to do the coding to the proper area and put in a budget request. We have sheets that all of the buildings have, and they are to do that. And that's a learning process because in the past, nobody made them do that physical paperwork to transfer it from one account to another. Whereas now we are actually making them fill out the sheet to make the transfer.
Okay, look, this is, and I didn't mean to interrupt you because I did, but what's getting frustrating about this is that we talked about this 3 meetings ago. And I think we asked Dr. Otto, as part of his performance evaluation of his building administrators, is hold them accountable to the budget line items that they budget so that they don't have a conference budgeted in office supplies. And they don't have office supplies budgeted under conferences. We did it just with special ed. We did the same thing. We have to hold McEmoyle and we have to hold the elementary principals, the middle school principals accountable to the budget line items. They just can't go out and put $1.2 million. It needs to be correct in the proper buckets, and if it's not in the proper buckets, it's part of their performance evaluation.
But what if something comes up, let's say that there's a conference that comes up that they really want to send XYZ person to, and they didn't have it budgeted, but they'll say, you know what, I'll withhold supplies for this, and let me put it in.
Well, I think what you do is you spend the money in conference, and they're over budget in conference.
Which is when they do these
when they
transfers.
do the transfer.
And then what happens is you're under budget in the next thing, and at the end of the day, we get out there and we say, okay, we were over budget, under budget, why? And that's why you have the variance report.
But you're not going to see the over under budget because I'm going to make them do a transfer to make that.
I prefer we didn't do the transfer. I prefer that they are over budget or under budget.
I think she has to do the transfer.
Do you have to do
Yeah, you can't run a negative
You have
account.
us a journal of these transfers, which you do if we were to ask for it. And then at the end of the year, again, I got to go back. If a building principal does not, all of a sudden a conference comes up, and it happens. These things happen all the time. He's got a defensible position. Hey, we found out about this after it was done. I had to move money out of here, money into here. It's explainable under evaluation, and we get it. But too often, it's just put me $10,000 here and $4,000 here and $5,000 here, and they'll move it around in the appropriate buckets when the time comes. Because if I put it under conferences, they won't touch it when it comes time to cut budgets.
And honestly, and this is going back to a previous place. There was it was a $15 million budget. When we did mid-year budget reviews, that was done in front of the board, and we did. It was, why are you taking money from here and putting it there? It wasn't just willy-nilly, so I'm not saying you have to go through that process, but it wasn't just like every month we were transferring money because, we screwed up when we're counting. And maybe if there was a little more, because, it's right, you can't predict every expense that's going to happen, but if every year one person's $20,000 off or $30,000, then maybe they need to...
They need a lesson on accounting
or we need to adjust the budget. That's the other part of it is, I think what we like to do with our budgets is I like to see where we're over and where we're under. So at the end of the day, we have an opportunity to review that and say, why are we consistently over here? Maybe our assumptions are wrong, or why are we consistently under? There's a place where we can...
And you'll see that because there's reports, especially what I emailed you, you can see it'll have original budget and then it'll have current budget. Original is what was submitted
initially, and current budget would be
current
with any
has
budget
the transfers in it.
It won't take long in our budget cutting process for these guys to figure out that if you put so much money into a certain category, we won't touch it because it's considered extremely important. And so you start sandbagging in one area, and you know something else is going to get cut, but don't worry about it. I got money somewhere that I know I can pull out and transfer. That's why you hold them accountable and you track it. And at the end of the year, the end of 6 months, Danielle can produce a report and say, guess what? This building, they're within 10% of all their line items. This building was off 35% in these line items, and you can look at where the games are being played.
And then you ask why.
Yes.
Well, I think you guys have an understanding of as a board, what the purpose of this is for. So I guess from your perspective, how do you manage that in terms of a process?
I don't want her spending 2 days at the end of every year.
Yeah, we don't want. We're not trying to make more work for you guys, but we're trying to hold the people that are in charge of their budgets accountable for those budgets. And at the same time, if there's knowledge to be gained, everybody gains something from looking at a budget and saying, well, boy, I was over here, under here, and now I understand, and these are the reasons why, and I can either change my budget to reflect that, or it was a one-time event, or it was,
And I
Their
think that
savings.
that has to be conveyed to them, that we expect your budget to not have to be amended continually throughout the year.
Well, no, I think the question is if there's a significant variance in a certain account, we need to know why. Is that simple?
or lots of little variances in the same account.
Yeah, over and over and over.
Over and over. So the aggregate has to be the
Discrepancies in
same.
general.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to holding your administrators responsible for their budget by line item, where they originally put it and where it ends up.
No, I
So
understand that.
that's where we're sort of
Because we
coming from
don't
as a
compare
board. So
the
how do we
original budget
Right.
to where it was
we
at the
don't,
end
we
of
don't
the
know
year.
enough about the
Right.
process you guys have in place now. I don't mean you two. I mean the district. In terms of coding and who does what and when and how that whole system is put in place and whether it's even being adhered to. So the degree that we can increase that or improve upon that process to achieve this goal that the board has, we want to somehow make that happen. So whatever we can do as a board to help, we want to do that. And you guys,
I would love to see last year's, we can do it, last year's original budget, the budget we approved, and where it ended up, based upon, the way you kept moving monies around. Because you moved the money all over the place.
well,
Basically
every month we're moving money.
Which
And at the
basically
end of the year,
means,
too.
And at the end of the year, right.
which basically means that this was just a shot in the dark with some effort put into it, and this is what reality was. And next year they go back to the shot in the dark.
Well, that was the purpose of the variance report we looked at in August, which was to say, okay, look, where were the variances and how do we
But
explain
that
those?
wasn't what the original budget was established at. It was what ended up versus what we paid out of those individual buckets.
It was original
I
versus
think I
actuals,
had
right?
original, current,
Current,
and
yeah.
actuals.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I had all
Go back and look
columns
at it.
on there.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of them come out, original budget,
Current
Okay.
budget.
current
and
budget.
actuals.
So we don't lose the original again because
No, we have the
it'll
original.
explain a lot.
Yeah, and that was that was aggregated by I would call them subcodes or total codes, and then where you can really get into the weeds is when we talk about pivot tables and you work into the individual line items, which Danielle just forwarded to me for the last few years. So I'm going to aggregate those, and we can actually get into the individual line items. So Walter, when you talk about pivoting into Birdsboro first grade paper,
Right.
you'll be able to do that and see what it's been like, in
Right.
that particular category. And that would be very helpful, I think, when we talk about special ed or some of these other things. Piggybacking on top of this, which is an idea I've sort of broached before, was what we don't do is also inter-department invoicing. So if we've got assets that are in one department and they're shared by other departments, we don't bill from one department to the next
Oh,
for that
vans.
asset. Huh?
Vans. They all fall into one person's budget.
Vans is one.
Yeah.
There could be there could be security, janitorial services for events and things of that nature. So we kind of ran into this problem last year when we were talking about cutting things, where we said, well, what's the true cost of this program? What's the true cost of this thing? We got direct costs like salaries or transportation, but we weren't getting the indirect costs that are also associated with those things. So I guess I'm thinking, I don't know how difficult it is. I know in our companies we just generate invoices in between businesses for those types of assets.
Inter-office.
Yeah, in our office.
Intercompany invoice.
Right. And I don't think that's been done here. I don't know how much resources are shared. If it's a lot or it's a little as part of a $50 million budget. If it's a little, maybe it's not worth troubling ourselves over. If it's a lot, maybe it's worth starting to get an idea as to how much we're actually borrowing resources.
Transportation is invoiced
Between,
Intra-district.
yes.
when you say transportation, you mean vans?
No, she's
No.
talking about contractors.
Contractors.
We're talking vans, like if the music booster, if the music department grabs a van to do something, that cost still all falls on the athletic department. Because that's where the vans reside.
You talking about the cost of the van itself, or the fuel?
The cost of the van, there's
cost of the van
depreciation
itself.
cost to
You
use the
use
van,
it
right?
1/10 of the time, you should eat 1/10 of the cost.
So think about it this
But-
way. If you had a,
We expense the cost at the time we purchase it. We don't really use depreciation in our day-to-day operations.
But
That's-
there's maintenance of a vehicle, there's service of a vehicle, there's inspections, there's, repairs, new tires, all those things get billed to
You may not be able to
somebody's
do
account.
it economically, but, I mean, and that's just one example. There are other examples, such as you talked about, we have an event where we have security, or we have an event where we do janitorial cleanups,
As far as the janitorial services, that is billed out
For outside.
for outside,
Not
but
outside.
not,
Right.
Internally.
I don't know how we would.
I don't know how we would do that.
Would it
We could
be
do some
somebody like
kind of
Mr.
an
Smith
hourly
saying,
rate,
I had
something
5 guys
like
there
that.
for 4 hours, it's an invoice to athletics because, we had to have guys out there, doing parking or I don't
But-
know what.
You're paying it out of the general fund and you're reimbursing it. We can't reimburse that payroll account.
No. What I'm saying is what you do, it's a journal entry essentially. So
But-
at the end of the day, when you pull up when I'm running a budget report and I look at athletics, not only is there, X number of football games, but if there's a homecoming is a big game and there's extra costs associated with homecoming, for example. I don't know. Or there's extra costs associated with a play that goes on for 3 weeks, 2 nights a week or whatever, because you get somebody out there doing security, somebody coming in after the play to clean up that normally wouldn't be there. You got somebody else who's directing traffic.
I think this all came back to the fact when we were talking about the drum, whatever.
Right,
that-
what's
that
the true cost?
We were looking to eliminate it, and all of a sudden, wait, there's transportation that's squirreled away into this account, and there's an advisor that 1/10 of 1% or 3/4 of his time is spent doing that, and so that's hidden over here. And when it all came down, said and done, it was almost 3 times what the number that was shown there, and there's really no, unless you actually do those transfers.
I don't know how. I've never been in a district that has done that. So
Well, remember, we're cutting edge.
And
No,
the answer may
I
be,
just
the
don't
answer may be
know.
you can't
Do
do
a
it.
cycle.
I don't know how
I-
that's done.
Yeah,
Do it
okay.
that way. A cycle, if you use a cycle every time you land, you get one.
The answer may be you can't
Appreciated
do it,
that
maybe you can't
airplane
do
by a
it.
certain amount.
I don't know.
You can do it the same way, you just gotta come up with a number.
Right, that's almost like not really an hourly fee, but some kind of drip.
But I can probably guarantee you that those clubs and whatnot aren't budgeting for those things.
No,
Right.
they're not.
They're not, but,
Right.
and we're not even saying maybe right off the bat you have to, but it's only fair to know what the true cost is that's associated.
I'm not proposing anything tonight. I'm just this is sort of a brainstorming
No,
idea, which is
I'm not even sure how you would go about.
maybe it's got to be a discussion with the building principals and Mr. Smith and some others who say, okay, well, look, what are the extra costs for these extracurriculars or these events and things of that nature that you're just taking care of as part of your budget? But is there another cost? IT is sort of spread out, throughout the district, and
And maybe you could even, I don't even know if you could do it with the vans some way of, and this would probably be a track nightmare, because I don't know if you track the mileage on trips.
They
Well,
would
an area
But
that we
you
could,
know- I mean, you know, you
we
could-
budget for substitute teachers, and that's an unknown.
I mean, I know it had to be done, because I was grad school at University of Delaware, we used to have to sign the vans out. And at the end of the month, they added up how much the entomology department used it, and who you used it for, and they back-billed the professors' grants for, 1/82nd of the maintenance and use of that vehicle. And,
See, the
somebody
vans are
just-
never signed out.
yeah, well, that's it, they're
you don't
never
track
signed out.
mileage?
You're not tracking the mile, we used to have to put mileage in.
There's
and
something
then
you would
add
at
up.
least know at 50 cents a mile, or 50, you have some kind of an idea of, and maybe not even necessarily to bill it in the accounting software somewhere, but so that you know that if van uses it for, 1,000 miles a year, maybe it's
somebody would have to
$500
keep
then.
track of
The odometer.
They'd have to have
the
a mileage
odometer
log.
readings and
well, it could be a simple thing of having a clipboard in the
In the van
van,
and-
mileage,
Mileage out.
mileage start, mileage finish, and you fill it out. When you use it, put the date, and off you go. And then somebody takes the clipboard at the end of the of a
If you
month.
don't
And
fill it out, you don't get to use it next time.
I don't know. It may sound silly. I'm just throwing it out there. You guys
no,
think about it.
it's just that,
I hear you.
I understand. I really
I mean, at the end of the day,
understand.
when
It's
we're
just
sitting
very
around in
difficult.
May and we got to make a decision about whether we're going to cut this sport or this club or something else, these things all come into that decision. Well, how much does this thing cost, or is there a way to generate revenue to cover it? And
Yeah, we go, we raise revenue, but by.
I mean, they fight
and also it
over.
only covers a tenth of what the actual program costs.
They fight over refilling the gas tank.
Well,
They bring
that's
it
my
back.
point. That's my point.
We end up filling it up.
Well, then there should just be, hey, look, you're taking it out full, and we're charging you X number of dollars
Well, you
a
take it
mile
out,
or
you use
something.
100 miles, you can charge 50 cents a mile.
That's what I mean. At least you have something basic. You know,
Yeah.
you'd have an idea of something.
All right.
It's not perfect.
I asked Danielle to fill out sort of like a multi-year or a 12-month budget calendar. She had done that, and she had emailed it out to the board back in, you think it was August?
It was August. It was attached to Dr. Otto's, one of his goldenrods.
I had overlooked it. I had her email it to me again.
Yeah.
But I'll make sure that it goes out to the rest of the board again. I think it's going to be pretty helpful because obviously we have a lot of decisions we have to make. Something that came up was the budget. We have to make a decision as a board. Was it December 19th on the budget?
There's
For
no
the
vote.
preliminary.
It's just basically I want the board to kind of say, yes, that's what we want posted
Right.
on January 3rd.
Right. And so in order to do that, there has to be a committee meeting, a finance committee meeting in
November, I think the 14th.
in December, and then again in November. And I think in November, we'd like to be able to have a conversation we'd like to get a first look at the budget in November, which means I think, Dr. Otto, the first week of November, you're going to need to sit down with your department heads and be discussing the budget so we get a first look at it. And if there's something alarming that's standing out at us, we have an opportunity to react to that, give feedback to Danielle and Julie so they can have a subsequent meeting with you guys and your department heads and make some changes so that the board, when they're looking at this thing, one of the complaints I think last year was whatever we looked at in December was so still in such a general sense. There was still a lot of work that needed to be done to refine that. At least maybe there's a couple things that we as a board can look at in November and again in December before it goes to the entire board for posting to the public in January.
No, we've already talked about doing that.
Okay. What was the other thing here? So I'm going to bring this one up here. We'll come back to some other issues with the budget. Capital reserves versus operating budget. We talked about this at the Facilities Committee meeting where Mr. Smith is using his operating budget to purchase capital items. Danielle looked at the policy that we have in the school district, which says essentially anything less than $3,000 that's got a lifespan in excess of 1 year is considered an operating expense as opposed to a capital expense. And it's a policy that the board created. It's not mandated by any kind of accounting practice or...
It is, but the threshold amount is the school district.
The threshold is the school district's discretion. And so I guess there's just some discussion as to whether or not we should be talking about what that threshold is. Should it be $3,000? Should it be something less or something more? It seems to me that if Mr. Smith is running out and he's spending $2,999 on a pump that we need that's going to run for 10 years, that would be a capital expense, and therefore it should come out of the capital reserves. But because it doesn't meet this arbitrary $3,000 number, it's now an operating expense that has to come out of his operating budget. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. However, as Danielle has explained to me, if he went out and bought 2 pumps and it was $6,000, then it's a capital expense. Or we had a project where we were doing door locks everywhere, and if he had bought 500 door locks, it would have been a capital expense. But if he bought, at the end of the project, 5 more, that was an operating expense.
Buy the pump and a box of wire nuts.
Because that's what the auditors actually
squirrel.
didn't cite us, but that's one of the recommendations they gave us.
So it just seems it's our own policy. We can change that number to anything we want. It just seems to me this is another one of those artificial constructs that it's there, and that because it's there, it's maybe screwing with our...
Do we have to set it as a policy, or can we just say, capitalize,
You have to have a capitalization policy, a capital asset policy. And as I explained to Andrew, there's actually a lot of districts that it's $5,000 or $10,000 because they didn't want to have to capitalize every little thing.
Well, there is a cost to capital because you got to carry the books and
Right. So I
appreciate
don't,
it.
this obviously was decided upon prior to me, but the district's is 3,000, which is what we've been compliant with.
So it just seemed to me to be an appropriate thing to sort of visit and talk
Again, the
about.
cost of them having to carry that and work it is may not make sense to go much lower. That's why they accuse of $5,000 to $10,000.
I think it's worked pretty well where it is.
Well, I think the issue is,
Anything over $4,000, you need 3 quotes, anything over 10,000.
Right now, but there's law in the place to make that 10, Kenny.
It passed the House.
Yeah,
On Friday,
it still
last
has
week.
to,
Third
there's
time.
law to make that 10 now.
What?
so you won't have to go out to bid.
For
Four
quotes.
Oh, what's the bid then?
25
think-
or
25.
185. There's
Yeah.
2
Well,
bills
prevailing
now.
wage is 25.
Yeah.
But that's in
But they're looking at raising it
committee
to-
now.
Oh, really?
100.
I didn't follow that.
Yeah.
185 would be nice.
It would be.
I mean, I think the issue was, one, you know, we were talking about in facilities, and I can let Scott talk about it during the committee of the whole, which is, at the end of the day, how much of the operating budget is being used on capital items, and should we be putting those into setting aside more money for the capital reserve and spending money out of the capital reserve for capital items? And that, I think, is the crux of the issue.
I don't really think you have a lot
I don't have a lot.
for
Yeah.
capital. Yours is like
you say a
$50
lot.
here,
Because
$70.
I used to do a
Well,
whole...
I don't
$50, $70.
Right, but I don't think he has large dollar
Purchases.
purchases.
No.
And if he does, they are capital, like the boiler. They're the big
They're the big heavy hitters.
things.
Because like our pumps, to get our pumps, I mean, we do that on, you know, like a rotable stock, you know, on time and everything like that. You know, so we'll just pull a pump, and we have like one spare pump, because all our pumps are basically the same in the whole entire school district. We'll just send that up to Reading Electric Air to rebuild. You know, $200, $300.
Okay.
I really don't think it's considerable. I mean, I don't really think you're spending large dollar items.
Well, take a look at it and let
I'll
us know.
take a-
Because if
I'll
it's
take
not
a-
an issue, then we don't need to talk
I'll
about it.
take a
But if it
look
is an
at
issue, then
My large dollar items coming up are going to be like tuck boards for like the DCUs and buildings and stuff like that.
well, we
for
also
the
talked
building-
about the chiller.
For the building control units. You know, that are going to be my heavy hitters right now with the heating system coming up.
Okay.
Season.
All right, we'll get 5 minutes till the board meeting starts. I'll end it here. And thank you guys. Appreciate your time.